Hey guys, OJ Albina here, bringing you guys another Draft League typing tier list video. That's a mouthful. Today we'll be going over a very important typing, but a very interesting typing for sure in the normal type. Now, it's really weird because normal types are often seen as required in a lot of builds, especially builds that are a little bit more Ghost Week, but when you actually get down and look at the normal types, there's not a lot of top tier ones. There are a lot of low tier normal types that really occupy and, perform well in the metagame, and, yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see how these guys stack up against each other. I am going to give you guys a fair warning. This one is going to be a little bit weirder than my other tier list in the sense that I am going to still be ranking them based on their value and how good I think they, accent a team and things like that. So because of that, a lot of very low tier Pokemon might very well be an S tier and A tier, despite them being valued at maybe below 10 points most of the time and things like that. So it's going to be interesting, but there's still some really good top tier normals that we can talk about, obviously, as we go through. So if you guys do enjoy today's tier list video, be sure to drop a like and subscribe to the channel. If you drop a comment as well, you're entered into our giveaway to win a copy of Scarlet or Violet of your choosing. Alright, that being said, we can jump into it, and Gen 1 has a plethora of normal types. It looks like the most out of any generation, if I had to, guess which one. Oh yeah, and we can kind of start off here. First off, we're going to have regular Pidgeot in D tier, and I'm not really going to talk about regular Pidgeot. I actually have never seen this thing drafted. What I am going to talk about is this A tier regular Pidgeot. This Pokemon is incredible. If you haven't ever drafted it and you haven't gotten the opportunity to, I would definitely recommend doing so. No Guard Hurricane is just one of the most fun spammable buttons to click in the world. The fact that you cannot miss your Hurricane is incredible, as well as Heat Wave, which is a pretty slept on aspect of being No Guard. Not missing Heat Waves is pretty cool because you have something that's stronger than Flamethrower that's not missing, which is really awesome, obviously, and a way to hit Steel types. Mega Pidgeot does struggle on hitting Rock types, which is a little bit annoying in specific Fat Electrics, but it does have U-Turn for great momentum. It can work up. Really the only things that it's missing is Hyper Voice and Focus Blast. or I guess Boom Burst too, that would be pretty cool. If it got any of those things, I think this Pokemon would be probably S tier. But it lacks a good normal stab, which can really bite it against a lot of neutral matchups, like the electric ones in particular. If this thing had Hyper Voice to punish those electric coming in, it'd be pretty insane. Sorry, excuse me. To switch into, No Guard's a fun ability, and if you have a team that really appreciates the force chip of Steel and Rock types, or just forcing them in general, like Mega Pitch Sand is a tried and true archetype that's very solid, so yeah, I definitely recommend giving it a shot. Next up, we have the Raticates. I'm going to go ahead and put both of these guys in D tier. They're both not very good. I'm going to put the Dark type above. They can be guts like Breakers, I suppose, but they really don't have any business being drafted on any team. If you're going to draft a low tier offensive normal, there's plenty of other options, and if you're going to draft a fatter normal, these aren't bulky, so you're not really drafting a fatter normal, obviously. So I would definitely say these guys are going to be D tier down here. Now I have seen them drafted, and I have never seen a regular Pidgeot drafted, so it's going to stay above those guys. Next up, we have Fearow, who is also going to stay down here. Now, Sniper can be a cool ability, I suppose, and it can hit decently hard with better coverage and something like a Pidgeot and, better speed, physical attack, things like that. But again, at the end of the day, it is a Fearow, and it's not very good. And this is going to be kind of a trend. There's a lot of normal types that are abysmal, absolutely terrible, and I'm just going to gloss over them very quickly. I'm not going to sit and talk about why Fearow isn't bad for 2 minutes. I'm just going to let you know that he sucks. A lot of the Gen 1 normals in particular are pretty bad. For example, Wigglytuff. Now, Wigglytuff does have a niche at the very least, though. Competitive is a good ability. It is a fairy type. It can rock, it can wish, it can teleport, it can maybe healing wish. I don't remember for sure, but it does have some viability. But again, typically you want your fairy to be a little bit more sturdy and higher tier. Count how many times I yawned. That was I think it was CG12 who comments on a lot of the videos. Shout outs to him. He said that we need a yawn counter for when I record late at night. I think it's already been 2 or 3. I'm not going to pop up on the screen, but I think it would be very funny to see how many times we really do yawn in a video. But back to it. Wiggly, it has a niche, but it's going to be at the top of D tier probably, if I had to assume. The next one, again, is also going to hurt. Oh, Farfetch'd. Farfetch'd is also going at the bottom of D tier. He's terrible. He's a cute guy, but he's awful. Oh, and I'm just skipping. These Pokemon are so forgettable that even when I'm looking at the normal typing, I realize, wow, these Pokemon are terrible. And just look how abysmal Gen 1 is so far. Now, it's going to get a little bit better towards the end, but oh my goodness, these are bad. Next, we're going to have Persian. I'll put Persian at the second to top of D tier. It has a good speed tier, U-turn, fake out, technician nonsense. It can nasty plot, but really, unless you're playing like a limited dex format and you have a bad speed tiers, there's no reason to draft Persian. And even then, I'd argue it's probably not worth it because I'm not creeping a Persian. Personally, it's just not happening because it's Persian. But yeah, we're putting in D tier here. Next one is also going to pain me, and I'm gonna put it above these guys. And Dodrio. Now, actually, I'm gonna put Dodrio above Persian. I think it's better. Unfortunately, Dodrio isn't great, especially losing Jump Kick. Now, it still does have Stomping Tantrum, but it's a Pokemon that, again, if you're going to draft a low tier normal, even one with 110 base speed, we're gonna come from one that's just much better here in a couple seconds. Why would you draft Dodrio? I couldn't ever justify it. I love this thing. It's one of my favorite Pokemon from Gen 1, just over time. And I actually have a Fixing Your Favorites featuring Dodrio coming out soon. Probably by the end of the week. So I would keep your eyes peeled for that one. But yeah, Dodrio's just not very good, unfortunately. I think if it got the buffs that we mentioned in that video, it'd probably be an B or an A tier Pokemon. So be on the lookout if you're a fellow Dodrio stan. Okay, next up we have Lickitung, and the precursor to my favorite normal type of all time, which we will talk about. Next, though, we do have just regular Lickitung, who's definitely a cool guy with an Eviolite. He's very, very bulky and can't be taunted. The only issue with him is that he's very passive, therefore can be still taken advantage of it even if he can't be taunted. Offensively, whether it be with setup or substitutes or just raw breakers, getting free switch-ins as Lickitung passively wishes up and things like that. So that's the big downside to him. But bulk-wise, this thing's a demon. It spreads knocks, spreads body slam pairs potentially, and can just be a big nuisance for a lot of teams. So I really like Lickitung, personally. I think it's a great mon. Okay, next up we have Chansey. I think objectively, compared to everything else, I have to put Chansey in B tier. I am personally not a big Chansey or Blissey guy, but I can't deny that in the right hands that they are very good Pokemon. If they're on this correct type of team, whether it be teleporting around, setting up rocks, just being that fat Spadef wall that avoids knockoffs at all costs, it can be really solid with a solid defensive core built around it. So, while I don't like it, I can't objectively say it's bad, you know? Okay, next up, not slacking. I don't know why I went all the way down there. I was in the right row. We have Kangaskhan. Now, regular Kang serves as a decent low-tier Wish Passer with a solid speed tier, and that's a little bit more offensive. It's cool. It's a cool kind of hybrid between, like, being that fat normal that can take on some ghosts and being more offensive and, you know, really being able to break through things. Scrappy is a cool ability, especially not big into. There's another one. It can be pretty solid offensively, power up punch, stuff like that. But the real demon is going to be our first S tier, Mega Kangaskhan. Now, this is presuming that this is not Seismic Toss Mega Kangaskhan, because that should be banned in every league. If you're playing a league that allows Seismic Toss Mega Kangaskhan, get a new league. Yeah, if you don't know, Seismic Toss with Frontal Bond basically a free 50% on anything that's not a ghost type, and that's not balanced. Because then there is no counterplay to the rest of it. Yeah, it's very broken. However, even without it, I think Kang is really solid. And I think a lot of times when people struggle with Kang or feel like it's Rocky Helmet fodder and aren't getting the mileage they want out of it, is because they're like very one-dimensional, bring like power up punch, body slam, or like double, at least stuff like that. And they're kind of playing right into the Kang counterplay's hands. Whereas I think fat, like Wish Kangs are absolutely demonic. Like fat Wish Toxic Kangs, they're fat, just 2 attacks Wish Tech Kangs. Can be so annoying for so many teams. It can really, really keep the rest of your team healthy as well as itself and really be a big nuisance to a lot of squads. So, I have some Pokemon that I've drafted multiple times. I really do enjoy Mega Kangaskhan. He's gonna sit up here. Next up, another B tier Pokemon for me personally. This might be a hot take, but I'm going to put Tauros in B. It's a very hard mon to fit onto drafts, but for its price point, if you can fit on this guy, it's a great 110 speed, low tier wall breaker, man. With sheer force and all the coverage that this thing has via being a Gen 1 Pokemon, it's an absolute demon in draft, and I think you should definitely give it a shot. I've had nothing but great experience from Tauros here, so I think he deserves the B tier. Maybe I'm crazy, maybe I'm a little crazy, but I think he's a demon Pokemon. Absolutely phenomenal. Porygon is a Pokemon that is actually going to get some viability here, and we're going to put it in C tier above Lickitung. A Pokemon that's seen a big surge in this generation. Whereas it could still be an Eviolite, low point normal in last gens, now it can teleport and grab momentum for itself, which is incredibly valuable. It checks a lot of really solid ghosts. Things like Dragapult are just absolutely stuffed by Porygon, which is awesome. And then having access to Analytic alongside like a decent special attacking stat means this thing isn't as passive as you would think. So it's kind of the best of both worlds, and being very bulky, being a good pivot, but not being absolute fodder and taken advantage of by everything. Next up, we have Big Snorlax. We gotta go ahead and put up an S tier. Now again, this is kind of what I mean, and a lot of these Pokemon that are higher up, even Kang, these aren't breaking 15 points, 14 points on a board in Kang, and Lax definitely isn't anywhere near that, obviously. But for its price point, Snorlax is one of the best Normals, whether it be Assault Vest sets, Curse Rest Talk sets, Gluttony sets, Thick Fat variants. Like, this thing can really check so many things well defensively, and the normal type is such a solid defensive typing if you have the stats to back it up, because of the fact that you only have that one weakness to fighting. So that's obviously very, very incredible, and I really do like Snorlax a lot. It forces... Another one. It forces a ton of prep, and always does well in any given matchup. So I'm a big Snorlax guy. Next up, I'm not a big Furt guy. I've never seen Furt drafted in my life. He's going to go down here in D tier. Noctowl, I'm also going to put down here in D, but a little bit higher. Tinted Lens plus like Hurricane and Hyper Voice and like Heat Wave and all that stuff can be pretty solid offensively. I think its stats really let it down. But by all means, the tools it has in its arsenal move pool wise are pretty solid, and it can be a decent Spadef-ish pivot into a lot of things because it has a pretty meaty Spadef stat if I'm remembering correctly. So yeah, he's a cool guy. I think Noctowl isn't as bad as people say. Okay, next up we have Girafarig Walter, another Pokemon I've quite literally never seen drafted. Hopefully that changes in Scarlet and Violet when it has access to Eviolite. And we also have Farigiraf coming in, and I know how to say that thing's name consistently correctly now. So go me. Okay, next up we have Dunsparce. Put it down here. This is a Pokemon I have seen drafted, so it gets put above the never seen drafted guys from Pidgeot and below. But Dunsparce, it can glare things. I think it can rock. I think it gets roost. I know it gets coil, and Serene Grace is a great ability, but again, the stats really just let it down. It's not very good. Hopefully we finally eventually get that Dunsparce evolution that we've been just praying for years and years. But right now, it's gonna go ahead and language in D. I honestly think with an Eviolite, if this thing does get an evolution, it could probably move it to C tier. I feel like it's pretty solid. Next up, we have the Bear. Now, I've seen this thing massacre in low tier leagues lately. As for standard, I haven't seen it drafted much, but I feel like under Trick Room, it does have some kind of viability. And as a wall breaker, it is impossible to switch into Ursaring, like, very well. Like, Facade plus, like, CC and EQ and all the coverage it gets, it is insanely strong. So we're going to go ahead and put it up here in C tier. I think it's definitely worth that spot. Next up, I have Porygon 2. I'm personally going to put Porygon 2 in A tier. Again, it does what Porygon does, but more expensive, but obviously a little bit better. I don't know if I would necessarily consider it S tier valuable. It is a great pivot, and it can be decently annoying to switch into offensively, but it's very one-trick, and for the price point that you're paying for it, I really just, I don't know, I'm not a big Porygon guy. It's also a Pokemon you have to, by all means, avoid it getting knocked. And you could say the same thing for Porygon or something like that, but Porygon is really only coming in those Ghost matchups where those Pokemon typically don't have access to that knock to hit you. Whereas Porygon's defensive roles are a lot more wide, and I just personally can't justify drafting it. Next up, we have Stantler, another Pokemon that could potentially get better with an Eviolite in Scarlet and Violet, but right now, it's pretty okay. Intim Pivot, but that's about it. Intim Pivots, it's decently fast, and it has okay coverage because of early news. Like, I know it gets Earthquake, so, like, normal plus ground is always solid, so you can't complain. It is, at the end of the day, a Stantler, and yeah, that is it. So we're going to go ahead and move on here from Stantler and go into Smeargle, which, by the way, did you know Smeargle gets every move in the game? It's pretty bad, but it does get every move in the game, and you can do some funny things. I feel like in lesser experienced leagues and like leagues where you're playing with people that, for lack of a better term, aren't as good, it could be funny. You know, you could set up hazards or spore things or, you know, whatever support role that you need to. Just please don't be the guy who tries to pull up with, like, Belly Drum E-Speed and try and win. Just draft Lanoon, who's soon here. Miltank is going to go ahead and go up in B tier. I think what's really valuable about Miltank is its speed tier is incredibly solid. I'm going to put it above Tauros. Its speed tier is incredibly solid for how bulky it is. And something I really value about a lot about like certain tanks and like fast walls and things like that. Like Nidoqueen, for example, is another Pokemon. I love its speed tier, and Miltank it's even better, obviously, allowing it to really outpace and bully a lot of those fatter, slower things and things like that, as well as be as fast as it wants. Like, I remember one time I had a Miltank and I was playing against like a Rayquaza, and I prepped the Rayquaza with my Miltank so I could get a faster Ice Punch off and not let it set up for free. Or not let it attack for free even. It does still set up because it probably lives because you are a Miltank. And that is one of the downsides of Miltank, is it's not very strong, but curse sets can be really annoying. Fat heal belling sets, rocks, all that stuff. It's just an annoying Pokemon. Thick, Fat, and Sap Sipper are great abilities, as well as Scrappy to hit ghost types on like curse sets. So, pretty dumb on. Next up, we're going to go ahead and put Blissey up here in A tier. I think objectively I have to put it here. I'm personally not a Blissey guy, just like Chansey, but again, it does what Chansey does, but even better. With access to boots this generation is a really, really cool tool for it, and it doesn't have to avoid knockoffs like the Plague as much as Chansey. Now it still does. I remember one time Kaz went on like a demon rant for like 73 hours about how Chansey is actually better than Blissey, and he might be right as a guy who really likes two of those Pokemon. But the good thing about this video is I know Kaz is not watching, so he's not going to yell at me in the comments. So there we go. We're thinking ahead there, which is nice. But yeah, that's gonna go ahead and be Blissey. Alrighty guys, after a quick hiatus, we're back. Obviously via me wearing different clothes and being a little bit sweaty because I just got out of the gym in the morning, which is a great way to start your day and great and nice energizer. I'm usually not a big morning workout guy, but I have a client early in the morning that kind of forced me to work out in the morning at least 2 days a week, and it always makes me feel great after. So get up and get some exercise. I think it's a great idea. Alright. That being said, we could jump on. I believe we're in Gen 3 at this point, and we can start off with Big Linoone, who is going to be... That's Taillow. That's little baby. We'll move Taillow down. It's great in Little Cup, but it's not going to be here. We're going to go ahead and put Linoone here, and I'm going to say C tier right about here. I think as a belly drum sweeper, it's really not all too bad. I think the Super Berry nerf in Generation 8 really did kind of hurt some of its viability, but it can still run those berries and still get up to a pretty healthy amount with Gluttony. And then between Extreme Speed, Seed Bomb, Stomping Tantrum, things like that, it has like almost perfect coverage for the Pokemon that it needs to hit in a lot of matchups. So it can be and Shadow Claw for ghost types. It can be a really big threat if you can facilitate that setup opportunity. It's just a bit hard with how frail it is. Unlike something like a Zigzagoon in Little Cup, who's also a demon in Little Cup, is going to be harder to set up and things like that. Next up, we have Swellow. I'm going to go ahead and put Swellow here in B tier. Personally, I'm a bit partial to Tauros. I like Tauros a little bit more just because of its price point. It tends to be a little bit cheaper, but Swellow is definitely a great Pokemon. It's incredibly fast. It can go physical with Guts variants very easily with Vesapo's Brave Bird. It can go special with Boom Burst, Heat Wave, things like that with Scrappy. Or it can go a mix set and kind of be a combination of the both. Like, especially in Draft League, I think sets that are like Guts, Brave Bird, but like alongside like a mixed Boom Burst with like a Life Orb are really, really tough to switch into for a lot of teams. It's very frail, it's very easy to revenge, and it's hard to position, but if you can get it in, it's honestly almost a KO machine, so it's pretty solid, for sure. Next up, we have Slacking. I'm going to put it in D tier. Great stats, but it has just an absolutely crippling ability here, so we're going to keep it pretty low. I'm also going to go ahead and put Vigoroth in here. I'm going to put Vigoroth above these guys down here. I have seen some people do well with it. It gets Eviolite plus Slack Off and Encore, and has a decent speed tier. I think it gets Taunt as well. It can be bulk up and do some damage that way, to where it's actually a pretty solid low tier normal. And I know John absolutely loves it, so we're gonna go ahead and put it in D tier. Next up, we have Exploud, another boom bursting normal. I'm personally going to go ahead and put Exploud here in C tier, right behind Linoone. It's another Pokemon that is just incredibly strong, right? It's so hard to switch into Boom Burst, and it has good coverage for the random resist that it might have. Even like cool nukes like Overheat and like Surf can kind of just break through every Rock and Steel type that want to switch in, especially considering they don't have reliable recovery typically, or just Boom Burst peppering them down, I suppose, in that sense. But it's just so slow and so frail, it's very hard to use and justify putting on a lot of teams, personally, in my opinion, because Scarf just really lacks the power output and the damage output that you want from it, and Specs is just a nuke, but it's really hard to position it against more offensive teams. It really bullies, like, bulkier builds, I think, but more offensive teams can really, really beat down Exploud, so, yeah, that's gonna be Exploud here. Next up, Delcatty. Again, it's gonna join the list of never drafted. Next up, Spinda, another Pokemon, like, it's gimmicky. I'll put it I'll put it below Smeargle because they're both gimmicky Pokemon. I think Spinda's worse. Obviously, like Contrary plus Superpower can be funny, but its stats are so bad. It's so slow and frail. It's not very good. Now we have a really cool Pokemon, a Pokemon that I personally think is very slept on. I'm going to put it in here in C tier, in Zangoose. I've seen this thing used phenomenally. I used it recently myself in PGP, not to as good a success as I would have liked, but in the 2 games that I did end up bringing it, it put on a ton of pressure, and it's almost an instant KO machine with Toxic Boost plus Stab Facade, and then access things like Close Combat and Swords Dance, a really good speed tier. I think as a low tier normal breaker, this thing is really, really good. Again, I would always prefer things like Tauros, Swallow, things like that, but definitely give Zangoose a try if you do have the opportunity to in your next sleeve. It's very, very strong. It's a bit frail and a bit slow, but still 90 base speed is not that bad, and I think you can definitely make it work. So I'm going to put it in C tier. Castform, I'm sorry, it's never drafted. We're going to put it down there. It's going to just languish. Anything like Fearow and below is basically like I'm never drafted unless it's someone's favorite Pokemon. I'm not even really like ranking these in order down here because they're just that bad in my opinion. I don't know. Then we have Big Kecleon. We're going to go ahead and put Kecleon, honestly, in my opinion, here in C tier right behind Linoone. I think that Spadef-wise, as Spadef normal, it's pretty okay. It gets access to Recover to heal itself up. Protean is a cool ability as well, but it can kind of bite in the ass a little bit, but it can also play some really cool mind games. I've seen this thing, you know, trying to be revenged by a Mega Medicham, and then it Shadow Sneaks, and the Medi goes ahead and high jump kicks and dies after the Shadow Sneak damage. Like, things like that can always be really, really cool, in my opinion. And it can really play around a lot of threats pretty well, whether it be with Assault Vest variants, which are typically what you're going to see. Though that does get worn down fast. You might see, like, Spadef, like, recover sets. I think it gets rocks as well. I think. I don't know for sure. I'm pretty sure it gets rocks. Okay, next up, we have Staraptor. I'm going to go ahead and put Staraptor in A tier. I think it's an incredibly strong breaker. It's very hard to fit onto teams, but Reckless, Brave Bird, and Double Edge just absolutely nuke everything that doesn't resist it or is immune to it, and even some resist just get 2-tabbed by Banded. And even on top of that, it does have access to Close Combat. It can also be an Intimidate Pivot. One of my favorite uses of this Pokemon was in, what was the league called? LBC and Gen 7 Finals. Panther brought an Intimidate Eject button. What do you call it? Why am I blanking on its name? Oh my goodness. I'm really blanking on its... was he Intimidate Staraptor or was he Intimidate Landorus? Okay, so he brought Eject button Landorus on a Beedrill U-turning. Went to the Intimidate Staraptor, -2 Beedrill, and then Pursuit trapped it. Sorry, that took me a minute. I'm sorry, it's early in the morning. But it was a really cool usage of it, and I thought that was really awesome. I might even talk about that in my flying type video. But it's a great breaker, and it has some niche applications as a bulky mon with Intimidate. So, definitely worth a shot. Bibarel, again, just another gimmicky mon. I know some people are going to be like, Bibarel has Symbol, and you can click Swords Dance or Curse. Come on, bro. It's not very good. Stats are bad. It's not very bulky. It's just not a very good Pokemon. Ambipom, I think Ambipom is at least worth a C tier slot. Just as ugly as he is, and as much as I just violently dislike this design, it does have a solid speed tier. It spreads fake outs and knockoffs and U-turns, and can be a decent low tier mon if you do end up needing the speed. I feel like I saw a lot in Gen 7, specifically in like Wi-Fi leagues and stuff like that. But you know, it's not the worst thing in the world. Lopunny, terrible. However, Mega Lopunny is going to take the #1 spot right now, which is crazy that a Pokemon can go from literally the worst to literally one of the best. This Pokemon is incredible. Regular Lop is just a gimmick mon. It's bad. It's slow. It's frail. It's not good. Mega Lop, though, with the normal fighting typing and Scrappy, there's not a single Pokemon in the game that resists that dual stab combination. When you factor in that, alongside it getting U-turn and getting Close Combat this gen, it really honestly, and Triple Axle, it really honestly outweighs the negatives of it losing Return, in my opinion. Losing Return is still tough, right? Which was a very, very spammable move, but you still have options like Facade, Strength, Mega Kick, things like that. And if leaks do persist, and say like Lopunny is in Scarlet and Violet, and it gets Double Edge like it did in Legends Arceus, that means that in Natdex leagues, Mega Lopunny will be allowed to use Double Edge, which is a bit iffy because it is kind of helmet fodder as a Pokemon. Like it's just going to attract a lot of rocky helmets, but it's also going to be like an instant 2-hit KO machine. I remember I played a Double Edge Mega Lopunny in BBT, and I didn't know it got Double Edge in Legends Arceus, and we were using Legends Arceus like movesets and stuff like that. And my Fizz G-King just got raw 2-shot. Like, it took like 60%, which was pretty insane. So, yeah, I think that would definitely be a cool tool for it. And I love Lop. It's a great pivot, great revenge killer, and just so hard to deal with over the course of a game. Especially considering that it gets U-turn now. So, yeah. I can't for ugly. Like, it's fast, but it's very weak. You know, it returns not a thing in the game anymore, so like it lost its most reliable stab, which hurts a little bit more when you're weak, and you know, I don't know, it's not a very good Pokemon. I like Defiant's a cool idea, I guess, but I'm personally not drafting like Sticky Web, Hazard Stack, Perugly offense. If you've done so and seen success, please let me know. Chatot—Chadot's an interesting Pokemon. I'm gonna go ahead and put it right here. I have seen this thing drafted before. Boom Burst is very scary to switch into on any stab normal type, especially considering that it also gets Heat Wave and U-Turn and Hurricane and all that stuff. It can Nasty Plot and Agility if you find the opportunity. The issue is it's very frail, slow, and weak, but I think the base powers of its moves can make it kind of viable in some specific niche matchups, and I feel like I'd make Oliver very upset if I put Chatot at the bottom of D tier, so he at least gets to sit towards the top of D tier for this list. I'm going to take a sip of coffee. Just so you guys know. I realize I talk really fast when I do these because I'm trying to get through so many Pokemon in one video that I get very tired while doing these. These are exhausting videos to record sometimes. Okay, Munchlax. Munchlax is going to be another Pokemon that I'm going to stick here. I'm going to put it above Vigoroth because I'd personally rather have a Munchlax as a like low 1-point ghost check. As it is just incredibly bulky, thick, fat. It can even curse through some teams and just smash through some squads that lack knockoff and ghost types and things like that. Like, it could be very annoying for a lot of teams. You'd think I wouldn't be yawning. I've been up for 3 hours, but you know me when I record. But yeah, it's a great Pokemon. Next, oh baby, here he is, the GOAT, the top of S tier, Big Licky. Now, I don't think he's objectively an S tier Pokemon, unfortunately. I'm going to put him at the top of B tier personally. Now, while he is my personal favorite normal to draft, I understand objectively that there are better normal types to draft for your team. I personally love Licky to death, though. I mean, it's become like a part of my personality at this point, how much I love drafting this thing and using him. I'm someone who doesn't play very well with passivity and things that are taunt fodder and, you know, able to be kind of taken advantage of, whereas Oblivious on Licky really allows it to function that bulky normal role without being taken advantage of for said passivity, which really, really is an awesome thing to me. It gives you like a built-in weather check a lot of times too with Cloud9, like being solid against rain and things like that, really being able to check those rain sweepers, at least the special ones, things like Kingdra, it'll be able to check them pretty decently. And yeah, I don't know, I really like Licky. I think it's a great Pokemon, and it's phenomenal for its price point. I have seen it raise throughout the generation of the amount of points that it costs, but I still would draft it any day of the week on 99% of my teams. Absolutely love this guy. But I'm sure you guys knew that. I don't have to go too in depth about Big Licky here, right? Okay, next up we have Porygon Z. It's another breaker I'm going to go ahead and put here in A tier. Whereas I think like adaptability tri-attacks are just so hard to switch into. It's almost an instant KO unless you're immune to it. Especially, again, considering that normals just typically don't have reliable recovery, which is a big reason that normal spam is very solid in a lot of instances, because a lot of these steel types and rock types just don't have a way to reliably get off that damage, which is really cool. Other than like rest or leftovers and protect and things like that. It can nasty plot, it can agility, it can be a scarf specs, a bunch of different cool things recover. And then like Bolt Beam plus Shadow Ball coverage is really all you need to hit everything neutrally or super effectively in most matchups. I really like PZ. It's really hard to fit onto teams like Staraptor. I'm actually going to put it above Staraptor. But I think it's an incredible Pokemon. I really do like it a lot. Next up, we have Regigigas. I'm going to go ahead and put it right here in C tier above Lickitung. Now, it getting access to like Protect and I think Rest, I think it got access to this generation. Really, really up the viability of this thing, allowing it to stall those slow start turns a little bit better and potentially cleave through teams. Now, it's very hard to do so, and again, you have to have a phenomenal matchup to stall out slow start and not give your opponent the entire game in a draft league setting. But I have definitely seen like Power Up Punch, Protect, you know, or like Rest Talk Regigigas just smash through teams, and it does keep its very solid bulk no matter what. You know, which makes it a very solid ghost check in general, which is nice. So I think for its price point, it's not that bad. Personally, we're gonna put it in C tier. Probably over everything in D tier. Yeah, these Pokemon are all terrible. Okay. Next up, we have Watchog. I've never seen a Watchog drafted in my life. That shit sucks. I'm going to go ahead and put in Pheasant there too, before I forget. But we do have Stoutland here that we did kind of skip over. And personally, I'm going to say it. I think Stoutland is dog water. Now, it's not as bad as any of the Pokemon underneath it, in my opinion. But I think it's very much so overvalued on, like, sand teams and things like that. You see a lot of people drafting sand, like Drill, Gigalith, and then, like, randomly slapping on a Stoutland. And I've done this myself. In SCP Season 4, I had it on my team. I think I dropped it. I don't remember. I might have kept it and just never brought it again after he missed attacks and didn't get KOs. But especially with this thing losing return, it's just not strong nor bulky enough for me to justify ever using Stoutland again. I don't know. It just... You'll never have a good Stoutland matchup where it actually comes in and forces Okos. And I think on a Sand Sweeper, not having that sense of pressure to it, and like something like an Extra Drill can Swords Dance even if it doesn't have an immediate KO every time it comes in. Whereas I feel like Stoutland is just mediocrity when it comes to damage output, and that's what I want out of my Sand Sweeper. I don't know. That's just how I feel personally. Okay, next, as much as it pains me to do so, for its value, I'm going to go ahead and put Audino in A tier. I almost want to put it in... I'm going to fucking do it. I'm putting Aud in S tier. Now, this is really weird to put like a 5 to 8 point Pokemon in S tier, but the value this thing offers at its price point with Regen, Knock, Encore, Wish, Toxic, Thunder Wave, the coverage that it has, allowing it to not be sub-fodder, is just incredible. This Pokemon is so good. It fits onto so many teams, and it just pivots in, takes a hit, wishes out, eject buttons out, whatever it may be, and gets you into a good position, and it's great at swinging games back in your favor. As much as I love Licky, and I love drafting him so much, I think Audino is objectively 10 times better, and I think it's probably the best, like, Wish Passing normal in the format. Like, if that's what you're getting your normal for. Like, Wish Passing, Ghost Resist, normal type, you should be taking this guy. Now, another hot take, I'm actually going to go ahead and put Audino Mega in B tier. Solely, honestly, partly because of the fact that you're getting an Audino. As long as your league isn't first turn Mega, which it shouldn't be, we're in 2022, guys. As long as your league isn't first turn Mega, you basically have an Audino until you need a little bit of extra bulk, which is nice. And Audino isn't a Pokemon that typically needs an item, so that's nice. I think the only downside to having Aud as your Mega is the fact that you don't get another Mega. So it kind of takes up a very valuable slot on a lot of teams, but it's a very solid Pokemon. I've used it before, and you just stay as the regular Aud, like I said. Do the same exact thing you would do as Mega Aud, but then when things go a little bit south and you're like, man, I need my Fairy typing, I need to get a little bit more bulk, then you Mega. Which, honestly, might not happen in general if all things go according to plan, right? So, definitely a dope Pokemon. Okay, Sawsbuck. I've never seen Sawsbuck drafted on anything, even Sun, so we're going to go ahead and put it down there. It's not a very good Pokemon. Then we have Big Bouffalant, and I am a big... That is a Staravia. We have Big Bouffalant, and I am a big Bouffalant fan. I like this one a lot. I'm going to go ahead and put it in C tier. I think offensively, this thing is very scary. Like, Swords Dance variants can really break through fat teams very well. I like Assault Vest variants with other Wish support. Like, if you have a Wish Passing Fairy, Assault Vest variants are very solid as well. And it's honestly just a very slept-on, bulky tank that can do a lot of damage. And it's not typically picked up as much as I'd like to see it picked up. So I like the Boof. He's a good mon. I think he deserves a C tier slot over everything underneath it. I think it's definitely better. Next up, we have Minccino, and it's kind of like a Persian Ambipom type mon, but better, in my opinion. I'm going to go ahead and personally put it behind Exploud. Solid speed tier, U-turn, knockoff, technician, as well as skill link are two solid abilities, alongside like Tail Slap, Rock Blast, Bullet Seed, which is cool. And yeah, it just kind of forces switches, gets U-turns around. It can be a solid Scarf Fairy. It can even King's Rock Shenanigans if your league allows that for some reason, but it shouldn't. CGT. It shouldn't allow King's Rock as it's a cheesy item, but it's a solid Pokemon nonetheless. Then we have Braviary. As broken as Rufflet is in Little Cup, Braviary is not so, and I'm going to go ahead and put it probably right here. I'll put it above Zangoose. Braviary can be solid with its bulk, whether it be bulk up sets. It gets access to close combat, which is a great tool for any flying type, honestly. It can bulk up, it can U-turn, it can be Scarf, Bad. Oh man, not doing too hot. But it's very tough to switch into, and it can be very bulky and annoying with boots and things like that this generation. I feel like you got a lot more defensive viability with boots this gen, which is obviously, only a plus and a good thing for Brave here, making it a little bit more versatile and have a little bit more longevity. Next up, we have Meloetta. I'm going to go ahead and put Meloetta up here in B tier. It's a great pivot with an Assault Vest. It can U-turn around, knock things off, Psychic, Focus Blast, Dazzling, all that good stuff that most offensive Psychics do end up getting. It could be Calm Mind, it can be Choice Specs and Choice Scarf, or it can even Relic Song in niche matchups and get that Pirouette form, which is right down here, which we're not going to rank because it's not like a Pokemon on its own, but it is an option for it, and you have to look out for, fighting coverage and, normal fighting, fast, really strong Pokemon. So I think it's definitely worth putting right there. Next up, we have Diggersby. I'm going to go ahead and put Diggersby up here in A tier above Porygon. Now, if you asked me this a year or two ago, I probably would have put Porygon over it. Porygon Z, that is. But I do think that I've seen the light on Diggersby and seen a lot of people use it really well, and I've used it myself in last year a little bit. And it, with spikes and U-turn and knock, and obviously huge power, plus like Earthquake and normal stab and like Facade potentially, or Body Slam, can be very, very tough to switch into. Elemental Punches, and again, that spiking aspect of it, I think, is another really slept-on part of Diggersby. I wish it got Rocks as well. I think it would be much better if it also rocked, but spikes are definitely, a solid alternative to that. And this Pokemon is obviously very, very strong and very tough to deal with. I like Assault Vest Diggersby a lot, so I think it's a very slept-on set. Quick Attack's great priority. It can double dance, or just do one dance. Shout out to Drake. And yeah, that's Diggersby. It's a pretty solid mod nonetheless. Okay, then from there we have Pyroar. It's a solid normal fire type. It's like a strong offensive typing. Oh my gosh, go away. I do not want Hippini. It's a solid offensive typing, but at the end of the day, like, you are a Pyroar. I'm gonna put you right here. Just stats kind of let it down, and it struggles with certain typings and things like that. But yeah, it's not terrible. Not terrible at the very least. Then we have Furfrou, which is the Pokemon I don't really see drafted. I personally feel like it could be okay with, like, its fur coat and U-turn as a pivot and, like, a good physically defensive Pokemon. I would love to see someone experiment with it, because I don't think it's that bad to where it just, like, doesn't get drafted anymore. I don't know. I think if you've tried out Furfrou, let me know in the comments, because maybe I could be tripping and it could be absolutely terrible. Next up, we have Heliolisk, which is another Pokemon I very much so enjoy. We're going to go ahead and put it here in B tier. Again, another solid pivot. Dry Skin is a great immunity ability. Being immune to water is always great. Having that guaranteed Scald Switch and it's like the bully every water ever is great. U-turn as a grass type, U-turn as a electric type is awesome. It can surf and grass knot ground types. Hyper Voice is also very spammable in a lot of matchups. It's great on rain. It's very strong offensively with a Scarf or Specs or a Life Orb, or again, it can be like an Assault Vest variant or whatever it may be, a Boots variant. It can be a very solid pivot into a lot of teams and be very... Oh, and Glare. Glare is always a good tool, because if something's paralyzed, it might not attack you. Next, we're gonna go ahead and move the next two Pokemon, and Toucan and Gumshoes. I'm gonna go through and we're gonna tier all the useless Pokemon real quick. You're pretty bad. Okay, that's it. Cool, that's actually not that many. Go team. Next up we have Bewear, and I'm actually gonna go ahead and hot take it. We're gonna go ahead and put Bewear here in B tier. I really like B tier. I'm gonna put it above Meloetta. I love me some Bewear. With Fluffy, it's just a phenomenal physically offensive wall. I've beaten Mega Medichans 1v1 with this thing many a times. Not many times, I did it once, but I've seen it happen a couple of times. It can honestly check anything that's clicking a physical attack that, isn't going to be like, something ridiculously strong, like stab, close combats, and things like that. And even then, with status conditions and helmets and bulk ups and things like that, you can honestly beat that 1v1 pretty easy. It has access to Swords Dance. It's a very slept-on Scarfer. This Clash season, we have a Bewear team. Clash Kings is a team tournament, and we have a Bewear team, and I feel like a lot of the weeks we end up bringing Scarf Bewear, because again, normal fighting is just so good offensively, and it's very strong offensively. It's got like 125 attack or something like that. So it's an incredibly strong Pokemon that is very much so worth picking up if you haven't done so already in your draft league career. Next up, we're going to go ahead and have Type Null. I'm going to put Type Null above Porygon, because I definitely think it is better than it as a low-tier normal type pivot. Eviolite pivot. It just wears an Eviolite, it rest talks, it U-turns, it paybacks, it can Facade, I suppose. It can even Swords Dance because of its insane bulk. So it's a very solid low tier, low point option to check ghosts and things like that. We also have its Evolution. Oh, we have Oranguru too. I'm going to go ahead and put... Oranguru is not very good. Bam. He sucks. Then we have Silvally, though, and Silvally is definitely a very good Pokemon. I'm going to go ahead and put it here in B tier. Probably right here. I feel weird ranking it because it's not really a normal type, right? It's every type, which is an incredibly valuable tool in Draft League. Obviously, there are going to be types that you're going to gravitate towards more due to your own holes in your teams, but having that option to patch any, glaring weaknesses you may have in a matchup is really nice, honestly. And I think Swords Dance variants of Silvally really saw an uptake this generation due to the buff and multi-attack, going from 90 base power to 120 no drawback of any move, which I think is really awesome. And like Swords Dance Flame Charge variants are really prospering because of it right now. So it's definitely a great mon. I like Silvally a lot. Komala, I'm gonna go ahead and put Komala like right here. He's funny, he's a cute guy. He can wish, I guess. He can also like do like the Sleep Talk Last Resort band set, which I have seen do some work. You can rapid spin as well, but at the end of the day, he is a Komala, and that is it. Send tweet. Drampa's next. I feel like I would be disrespecting Drampa to not put him in C tier. So I'm gonna put Big Snoop Dogg Dragon here, as this thing is very annoying with Sap, Sipper, Berserk, a bunch of the Cloud9, another weather check. It can be very solid. Kurt fucked me up with it in week 1 of CGT. I used it in the Sports Circuit tournament and really enjoyed it there. It has great coverage, Calm Mind, Glare, Roost, Defog, a bunch of different cool options. And it can be a really solid Pokemon. So, despite its low speed tier and its mediocre bulk, it can be really formulated to do very well. Okay. Is there any more Gen 7? No, it looks like we have 1, 2, 3 more. Okay, I'm only going to count the Indeedis as one. We have Greedent here, who we are also going to put here in D tier. Now, I know that it's like a big meme on Wi-Fi to be like, yo, Greedent's the GOAT. That's my guy. I like Greedent. But at the end of the day, he's not a very good Pokemon. No way of really healing itself. I think if it had Recycle, it would be a lot better. But I don't know. I feel like it's very liable to get overwhelmed, and it just really, it's a very gimmicky Pokemon that relies on gimmicky shit. Now, it's not the worst thing in the world, and it's I think I have to put it higher in D tier than this. We're gonna go ahead and put it, we'll put it near the top of D tier for all you Wi-Fi folks out there, but there's no reason I would ever draft a Greedent, personally. I think it sucks. We do have Obstagoon, which I think is a really cool Pokemon. I'm going to go ahead and put it in A tier up here, probably above Porygon. It's tough when it's your normal and your dark type, because now you don't resist ghost types, so I think you have to get either a good normal to switch into ghost, or a good dark to switch into ghost on top of Obstagoon when you draft it, which makes it kind of tough, because I feel like you draft this Pokemon independently of its type you draft it, because it throws off ridiculously strong Facades and knockoffs with Guts, as well as Close Combats and Parting Shot, and it can switcheroo its Flame Orb after it procs it. It can Obstruct to get something to -2 as it tries to get out of there, which is also a really cool tool, as it can be an instant KO pretty much at that point, whether it be the Pokemon that stays in or the Pokemon that switches in and gets to it KO'd. So, I don't know. Whenever I've played an Obstagoon, I've just had nothing for it off defensively. So, I think it's a really cool Pokemon. Double is bad. It's very gimmicky. I'm going to put it right here. I know Amel's going to be upset. It's very gimmicky. You can pull off like Cotton Guard stuff, or you can even be like Swords Dance, Cotton Guard, Agility, Last Resort, whatever the hell Amel was against D-Ray that one game where he smashed him with the double. At the end of the day, it is a double, though, and it's not going to be a very consistent pickup for your squad. And then lastly, if Indeedee, I'm going to lump both of them together, and I'm going to go ahead and put them, I think, in B tier, because I think this thing as a breaker can be very strong. Now, I'm going to put it below Meloetta, because I think I would much rather have a Meloetta, but with Psychic Terrain and Expanding Force, this thing can be very strong as a breaker. It has Hyper Voice, Dazzling Gleam, Mystical Fire as well, which is really perfect coverage for it, and it can be a big nuisance for a lot of teams, and I know J-Bear likes it, so we got to make sure it's there. But yeah, that is our list of all of the normal types in a draft league setting. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. If you agree with me, if you think I'm tripping on something. And again, take a look. There's not really that many top tier normals opposed to other types. And even then, I feel like I'm stretching putting a lot of these up high. And they're only up high because they're relative to the other Pokemon. If you look at these guys on a draft board, the only Pokemon that are like above 15 points is going to be Lop. That's actually it. That is literally the only Pokemon that is going to be above like 15 points on any given draft board in a Natdex League. Or that should be, I guess. So yeah, let me know what you guys think. Drop a like if you enjoyed. Sub if you're new. See you guys next one. Later.